Welcome back, baseball fans. The 1973-76 Carryover League Draft. We have finished 8 rounds of the draft and about to embark onto undrafted free agency. What I'm going to do here is we're going to take a look at one of the best picks that occurred in the last day of the drafts per team, the pick I like the most, regardless of being the best player or not, and we'll just kind of go through the list that way. The Ohio players, they added Mike Norris. It's funny because if you watch the Fall League World Series, Mike Norris and his 1980 card, which was with Oakland where he won 22 games, he propelled the Ohio player franchise to a world championship. Well, it's the Fall League World Series. It's not quite like the Summer League World Series because the cards are more randomized. In any event, it's kind of interesting. 8 years prior, Mike Norris's 1976 card gets into the league. The Cardinals, the thing I like most about what they did was in an improbable scenario where you're in the division with the Reds, Pirates, and Cubs, they improved 4 guys, which is probably a record. Bob Forsch on the rotation, Bate McBride hitting .330. Mike Tyson has a really interesting 1976 where he hits 9 triples and 200 at-bats. Ridiculous card. Joe Torre becomes a 2 at first base, and it's .282 in his last year before the move on to Keith Hernandez. So the combination of all that is what I liked about the Cardinals. The Yankees, getting Willie Randolph back from an expansion team was a smart move. You don't want to let him slip away like the Pirates let him slip away. Yeah. Florida Marlins. See, they also elected to improve internally with Ed Figueroa and Tom Bergmeyer, 2 very important pitchers for the Red Sox and Yankees, respectively. They're property of Florida, so they become trade chips. Seattle also improved a lot of guys. Grimsley and Busby on day 1 and 2, and Tom Pachork, they made him a .295 hitter. They get a bunch of .280, .290 hitters on Seattle, plus good starting pitching. Not much of a bullpen. Matty Allou's hitting .296, Pachork's hitting .290, .285 hitting John Ellis. Interesting. Clever moves for Seattle. Kind of a super sleeper. They're sort of maybe passing the Texas Rangers out west, possibly. The Dodgers did a couple neat things in a draft that I otherwise loathed. Liked trading for Stan Wall, a lefty reliever with the Twins. I also, funny thing is, they took another guy from the Twins out of their farm system, Joe Decker, who pitched on 3 days rest. The move for Bobby Tolan is kind of puzzling. They wanted a left-handed bat, not realizing that they have 4 left-handed hitting outfielders. Everybody else on the team bats right-handed. That includes the infield and your catchers and your DHs. But whatever, it's the Dodgers. Twins, they actually, as it turned out, were able to take that trade chip they got from the Dodgers to get Jerry Garvin. They're only going to have him for a few years, then let him go back to the Blue Jays. This is a 1976. Garvin was even in baseball. It was one of those projected cards that Strat-O-Matic printed. They made estimates of how guys would play in 77. So, and they made a bunch of those cards in 76. And they made one for Jerry Garvin, and the card's pretty reasonable. Portland, they added an interesting on-base machine. Glenn Borgman's got a .417 on-base percentage. Plus, they added Chet Lemon, and the White Sox were unable to make a trade for him. California, they actually got some nice relievers. Don Kirkwood and John Montague, who actually pitched for the Angels. Montague later in the decade. The Padres, they got a Cito Gaston card hitting .291, which is nice. Arizona Diamondbacks. Oh, they had a nice 8th round pick. This is great what happens in the 8th and final round. They had Hal Breeden, a 4v14, playing first base. They moved him to DH. They needed a left-handed hitter. They needed a defensive first base. And presto, Mike Hegan pops up in the 8th round. A guy discarded by the Oakland A's because he's hitting just 275. Nice pickup for Arizona. Defense and a left-handed bat. Milwaukee Brewers having an interesting draft here. They added Sixto Lezcano. Tim Johnson, actually a left-handed hitting middle infielder, will actually get some playing time because Robin Yount, who is the starter, it's not that great yet. Robin Yount's hitting like 250. So I expect Tim Johnson to get some playing time. Houston, I like this move. They had 2 moves in 75 because they were stuck. They took their utility player, and then when they were stuck, they said, you know what? We got Bob Watson as a 313 hitter. Let's make him a 325 hitter and extend his contract to a 3-year contract. So that's often what a team will do when they're stuck. Just extend one of your star players out into the future so you don't have to waste a keeper. You see this in the NFL all the time, restructuring contracts just to move that money into the future so you don't have to worry about it in the present. Cleveland has really knocked it out of the park with their new guys. Kuiper, Eckersley, Rick Manning, and Jim Kern. 4 new guys. Probably the best 4 new guys any team has added for a team that needs to make their move. Cleveland's got to figure out how to win that division. And now they also got Cliff Johnson, power hitting catcher that Houston left unprotected. I like Cleveland's draft. It really pops out here. Toronto, well, the best pick might be adding Tom Underwood because he was with Philadelphia and the Phillies were about to draft him 2 spots lower. So Toronto snuck up and stole Tom Underwood from the Phillies. Underwood pitched for both Toronto and Philadelphia in his career, amongst other teams. Colorado Rockies. Oh, what a great pick this was. So normally Colorado doesn't do smart stuff in the draft. 8th round. They found their ace. 8th round of the draft. Nobody was interested in Joe Coleman because he's got 1 good year left in 73. And after that, he's pretty bad until he transitions to a reliever. But that 1 year, the Rockies get him as a 23-game winner and a 3.53 ERA. He becomes the ace because he can pitch on 3 days rest. And that moves Dick Drago from a 1 to a 2. And Rick Rhoden from a 2 to a 3. And Al Fitzmaurice from a 3 to a 4. You get the idea. So Coleman improves the Colorado pitching staff. I wonder how many home runs he'll allow there if he allowed a lot in Tiger Stadium. Philadelphia, hey, this is another nice pick. I really like the 1973 Gary Thomason, and he was on the board for such a long time I was worried he wouldn't get picked. Nobody needed him as a left-handed corner outfielder, but guess what? Philadelphia needed a left-handed hitting first baseman because they lost out on Tom Hutton. They prefer Tim McCarver catching. They needed a platoon with Tony Taylor at first. Gary Thomason's a 3 at first base. So you don't need him to be a corner outfielder. And Gary Thomason's a base stealer, 285, 758 OPS. Unfortunately, he's 21 years old, and that's his best year. His debut year. After that, it's just kind of... He debuted with a ceiling, I guess you could say. Kansas City best pick here was adding Dennis Leonard in the 6th round. Now, traditionally, Dennis Leonard would be your ace, but statistically, he's incredibly mediocre, so he's going to be the number 4 starter. As Marty Patton is a significantly better pitcher, his ERA is a 1.5 less than Dennis Leonard, so he becomes the ace. Gurr becomes the 2 guy. Splittorff the 3, Leonard's the 4. Your Pirates, they added a center fielder. They added Omar Moreno. The thing about Moreno is he actually walked and is a 357 on-base percentage in a small sample size in 76. But after that, he starts to become a free swinger, was never really an effective leadoff hitter, mostly known for his great defense. But at least they have him with some on-base percentage now for a loaded Pirate offense. Baltimore, okay. this makes sense. and you can call it an embarrassment of riches, and maybe this is a puzzling move, I don't know. Baltimore elected to improve Cy Young pitcher Jim Palmer to Cy Young Jim Palmer. So they took a 73 Cy Young Award and turned it into a 1975 Cy Young Award. His ERA is about 0.3 less. The whip is about, 0.05 less. It's very minor improvement. But, like we said earlier about Bob Watson, you just extended it. You restructured Palmer's contract and gave him a 3-year deal. Now you don't have to worry about his card expiring next year. You've already you got the next 3 years locked up for Jim Palmer. His whole career will be with the Orioles. That's how the Hall of Famers, your traditional Hall of Famers, get locked up with their teams. Johnny Bench to the Reds, Jim Palmer to Baltimore, etc. Tigers, obviously Matty Mark Fidrich with the first pick in the draft is the first move to youth this team has had since forever. Vegas, interesting draft. They love defense at first. They replaced Wes Parker, great Gold Glove first baseman, with Tom Hutton, a 1E4. We talked about Philadelphia lost Tom Hutton to these guys of Vegas. A 1E4 at first. Also, Greg Gross improves to a 2E1 in left field. If you can't be a 1 in left field, being a 2E1 is pretty darn close. They have Ken Berry, a 1E1 in center, and Mike Anderson, a 1E5 in right field. The Expos got younger with Ellis Valentine and Larry Parrish. I like those moves. Boston, this is a sentimental move, but they needed a starting pitcher, right-hander. They're easy to find. Bunch to choose from, but they elected to go with an old face. Sonny Siebert. Pitched for Boston. 69, 70, 71 era, maybe. They brought him back. He went to St. Louis and decided, let's bring Sonny Siebert back for his final year as a number 4 starter behind Rick Wise and Louis Tiant and the spaceman Bill Lay. So I like that sentimental pick. I like sentimental stuff like that, if I can get it. Mets. Clever stuff outside the organization where they seldom go. They went outside the organization for a pitcher. I don't know if that's ever happened. Normally the Mets just go get their own dudes. But this guy, Dennis Blair, was sitting out there in 74. His rating right here, he's the number 2 right-handed pitcher available. He's got a 120 whip with a 327 ERA. He did it for the Expos. The Expos had too many right-handed pitchers. Somewhat surprising that the Mets had to go outside the organization, but statistically, he was better than Craig Swan and Hank Webb and Randy Tate and all the guys who were in the Mets system. And they got another Expo in 73, this Clyde Mayshore with a really high on-base percentage versus right-handed pitching. Clever. The Mets found value in all these picks in the unusual spots. They really dug deep. Tony Saleta improvement, Bob Apotica, Terry Harmon. These are all nice picks for the Mets. Does it translate? They kind of retooled. They didn't rebuild, they retooled. They still have Seaver, Kuzma, Matlack, etc. Texas Rangers. Not sure what I like about this draft other than Dave Rader has a 420 on base, 420 on batting average versus left-handed pitching in 74. That should be pretty fun to use. Atlanta Braves. Ouch. Started great with Baker, Enrico Cardi, and then Cabell, Leone. No, they just couldn't. Here's the thing about the Braves. They maxed out already the great talent from 73 and 4. The launching pad offense of 73, all those sluggers, and then 74, Necro and Tom House, the great pitching, Buzz Capra. So that's the last chance for the Braves. After this, the Braves are going to kind of fall into a hole, we believe. Not the case for the Cubs, who had a great draft. Oh, this is even more. This is clever, too. So they've had a fantastic draft with Madlock and Suter and Cardinal, Billy Williams, etc. Well, we talked about in the offseason that Bill Bonham had the best 1973 card available. The Cubs have temporarily locked up 1973, but in the year of 74, they took Bill Bonham because he was in their card pile. He's not as good, but the plan is, in undrafted free agency, they're going to swap out Bill Bonham and Don Kessinger, flip the years. So Kessinger gets extended from 73 to 74, and Bill Bonham moves into that 1973 card from 1974. That's a clever move. A lot of teams are going to be doing an undrafted free agency, flipping years for players that improve both of them. White Sox, every move clicked for the White Sox. They brought Stan Bonson back, who, get a load of this, folks, 76, pitched for the Oakland A's in 1976. Not anymore. He's back with the White Sox at age 31. After 3 kind of lousy years, he puts together a 3.34 ERA, mostly as a reliever. Plus, they had a Bob Coluccio, who was a White Sox. Nice corner defense for Lamar Johnson late in games. Lamar Johnson, a 320 hitter. Bucky Dent's a 2 at short. They've done everything possible to fill out your ballot to compete for a World Series. They just have to hope Oakland collapses, and they're the bridesmaid. They'd probably be the favorite in the American League. American League is not as deep as the National League at the top. National League has about 8 teams that could go to the World Series. American League, maybe 4, 5, 6. Giants, oh my goodness. Don't know how they butchered the 1970s, but Von Joshua and Larry Herndon. We got the ace of the 73, the 74, the 75, and the 76 Giants pitching staffs are all pitching simultaneously. Clearing the deck for them to win the West from the Dodgers, the Astros, and the Padres. They don't have to deal with the big red machine. Speaking of them, the Reds and the A's were the last 2 teams to take a guy in the 8th round. Both teams didn't need a guy. They could have played this season with a 19-man roster and been totally fine. The Reds needed a hitter, no room anywhere. They didn't need an infielder, they didn't need a catcher, they don't need an outfielder, but they still have to finish a roster out. So they took J.L. Liu, who hits .324 versus left-handed pitching. I don't know how he's going to get in the lineup. You'd think a .324 hitter would find his way into a lineup, but you're asking Pete Rose or Ken Griffey or George Foster or Cesar Geronimo to go on the bench. So figure that one out, folks. But J.L. Liu, and at least he's a pinch hitter for somebody. I don't know who he would pinch hit for either. But anyway, they got him. So they have the best offense in the sport. And lastly, last pick for the Oaktown A's. And this is a crusher here. Oakland just needed somebody to swing the bat versus left-handed pitching. And they find 42-year-old Willie Mays. I talked long and long about that. I wasn't going to use Willie Mays unless he was a Giant or a New York Met, teams he played for. But in this case, he goes across the bay from San Francisco to Oakland going, I wouldn't mind a World Series ring. I got one with the Mets when I was added to the 69 Met roster, a ring that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Now he wants another one with Oakland. So the rest of baseball, Oakland is playing with their food, as we like to say. And that means the draft for the 8 rounds is over, but we got a lot more work to do. I want to come over here to the sheet that has the players, the records of all the players in the league presently, including the draft. There's only 613 players on a contract ready to go right now. There's 27 spots left on rosters. Those are spots left when teams elect to improve a guy. And that is the next part of what the league has to do in undrafted free agency. Here are the 27 players. They are 27 guys here. Joe Torre, Ross Grimm's, Greg Gross, all taken in various spots of the draft. So these 27 spots, with this number here, you see C74/7307. That means that Joe Torre used to have a 1973 card, and they bumped him up to a 74 card. So St. Louis has to find a player from 1973 to fill the vacant roster spot. That same thing happened with Grimsley. He went from 73 to 74. Greg Gross went back in the time. He's the only player to do it. He went from 75 to 74 because his card's actually better. So that was opportunistic. Most guys are moving into the future. Parker goes from 73 to 75, as is Bucky Dent, as is Bob Watson, as is Messersmith, Jim Palmer. 74 to 75, you see that. There's also some notes here of what the teams might do. The Mets are looking at flipping Rusty Staub and Bob Apotica into different cards. We think the Cubs are going to do the same thing with Bill Bonham and Don Kessinger. Detroit would like to get Dave Chalk in a 1975 card because he's a 1/3 baseman who hits 270. These are just notes I'm making. So these are 27 moves that happen in the token round of the draft, which is the next part of the draft that occurs. Let's look at the tokens. And here is the ultimate token list. So the off season back in October a year ago, each team starts with 5 tokens. There are trades in the off season, pluses and minuses. And then you see the draft. These are more pluses and minuses as trades are made during the draft. You start with 5 tokens and you end up with this many. 5 times 32 teams, you start with 160 for your league. You finish with 160 for your league. But each team is a different quantity. So that's the pecking order of who gets first. We take the teams who have 7 tokens, then the teams with 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, etc. The list keeps going down to the negative, but ultimately, when everybody's happy and everybody passes, or knocks, as they like to say, you want another card? No, I'm going to knock. I don't want one. I'm going to pass. When a team knocks, they're out and they don't get to add any more players. Kansas City would have drafted 18th overall, but of all the teams with 7 tokens, they are the lowest seed. So they get the first choice in undrafted free agency: Expos, Mets, Giants. Then we go to the teams with 6. Kansas City you see with 18, but all these teams here jump ahead. Ohio, St. Louis, San Diego, Cleveland, Toronto, Colorado, then Kansas City. So Kansas City has the first, the 11th, and then the next Kansas City 5 is going to be 29. So they have the first, 11th, and 29th cards available in undrafted free agency. And that's the next video to make. Once undrafted free agency is completed, we will have a full league of 640 cards, 20 cards per team, 32 teams. And that'll be the next video. So thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.